All right. I would like to thank everyone, Sean, Antonio, and Jonathan, for their presentation, interesting ones. And of course, we are now for the question and question session. If I will check if there is any question in the chat box. There is nothing, but yeah, if for our audience, if you have any question you would like to ask the presenter. Anybody wants to ask?
While we're waiting, Ibrahim, I might ask Jonathan a question just on,
okay, fine.
On your table, Jonathan, of the factors that people consider. I was surprised that cost seemed quite low. I know obviously staff training and so on would also be important.
Yeah, it is surprising in that paper it was quite low. That paper, I think the region that's based in was just slightly different to the other papers, so cost seemed less of a concern. But by and large, I did see cost actually come up a substantial number of times, I have to say. So it seems to be actually one of the main factors in a lot of the other papers that I researched as well.
Okay.
Okay, until we get any other questions, I have as well a question to Sean. I mean, you mentioned about the link between GS1 and Building Smart. Maybe I would like to know more details, or can you give us more detail about the link or the integration between GS1 and IFC, for example, and any other format? Does it need any special requirements to use it? Any kind of technical preparation to link with IFC or XML or any other format that we use? Yeah.
Good question. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, we have a memorandum of understanding, as I think I mentioned, between GS1 and Building Smart, where GS1 recognized that Building Smart have a lot of the standards for data exchange within the construction sector, whereas we would have the standards for other sectors, but we're not going to impose those on the construction sector. We're not really fit for it. But Building Smart also recognized that they don't have interoperable identification standards for products and for locations and for assets. So the reason for coming together was to explore that cooperation, so that making it truly open BIM by having non-proprietary standards. So if you think of a product within a building, that product would normally be allocated a GUID by the software, but the GUID has no meaning outside of the software. Whereas GS1 standards, the barcode, if you like, if you have a barcode on a universal beam or whatever it might be, that you can then take that barcode and you can go and order that exact product from the manufacturer of the beam, or if you need to replace it, or if you need to keep it and connect it to data, so connecting it to a digital product passport, for instance, that it's like the number plate of the product, and that should always be associated with the product for the lifetime of the product, not just the building, but the product. So if the product is taken out in 60 years and reused for something else, that you're going to have all that information, including embodied carbon, for instance, and all the energy properties and so on. So that's the idea behind it. So we've had a number of years looking into this, the last few years in particular. We have an organization called the Digital Supply Chain Group, which is a work group that looks at how this could work in practice. So we have all of the major companies, particularly in Europe, in the construction sector, looking at how they can identify their products, how they apply the barcodes, at what stage in the production process you can do that, because products move through a life cycle. So if you think of an insulation product, you start off with a few sheets of thin metal and some insulation material, and you put the three together and go through processes that maybe are heat treatment or painting. So how do you put an identifier on that? And then the other big challenge is made to order products, that most products, maybe 80%, are project specific. So they're ordered only for that project. So how do you apply a number to that? So we've been exploring some of those, and we have some good solutions that are kind of coming to the fore at the moment. But certainly with the digital product passport, we're now seeing, because the EU are mandating an ISO standard for identification, that the GS1 solution fits that very well.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Yeah, good to hear. I mean, so we do you expect to have some kind of practical application more than currently for construction using GS1?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of practical in the construction sector in other countries, not so much in Ireland, but in Scandinavia in particular. Whereas as we showed the sector, in the case of Sweden, it was the private construction companies and manufacturers of construction products who came together. You could see the EU regulation coming, and they said we really need to start getting our data together and improving data quality. So we need some kind of identification that's going to be interoperable and open and so on. And they settled on the GTIN for that, the Global Trade Item Number. And then in Norway, it was the state building company, Statsbygg, who mandated that any products that are used in the projects that they run, which would be all the schools and hospitals and roads, infrastructure, as well as buildings, that if you're going to supply products to those, you need to have a GTIN because they need to be able to trace back and into the future those products. So those are the kind of use cases we're seeing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. I have a question as well to Jonathan. Quick one before the time end. When we hear this term small BIM, sometimes people can be confused or get a kind of impression of a new or special kind of process and definition of BIM implementation. So can you just elaborate more on what is the key difference between the small BIM and the normal BIM, if we say, in terms of maybe level of details, maturity levels, processes, or it's just because of the application on small projects? Or
so it would typically just look at the application on small projects, potentially where maybe ISO 19650 is not being used because it's been maybe established that ISO 19650 is maybe just too much of an implementation from a skills point of view from the organizations, purely because the project is small. So based potentially on the project value, anything from maybe 50K up to a certain level where ISO, certain parts of it could still be used, but the full collaboration is not going to be beneficial. For example, if you're working on whether it's a home extension or a one-off home, but it's looking at SBIM in the context of what is the greater benefit. Effectively an SBIM standard, the end user is not necessarily going to benefit from manufacturers or handover information. So it's looking at where the benefits could be potentially just at design stage for efficiencies, or just at the quantification stage from a pricing perspective as well. So it's looking at those parts of it that are relevant, that may not suit in a full BIM project.
So do you mean, can we say, for example, customize the normal BIM process into a smaller one or a special one that the SMEs can follow and don't bother with the full process for the ISO and all things?
Yeah, I would be cautious about implementing a new standard, but that just leads to confusion. And then if that firm grows and they need to adapt to an ISO standard. So what I would see it as maybe almost a substandard or part of the ISO 19650 type compliance. So it's looking at how that would adapt. And if there's any additional parts that would be most relevant for small projects, particularly the quantification part of it. And putting a big focus on that from the cost perspective from building suppliers or material suppliers or kitchen suppliers. So looking at how that part fits into it, and if that's an additional add-on or addendum that's needed away from the main ISO area. But I'd certainly be cautious about implementing any sort of additional standard. I'd see it as an adaptation or with extra addendums, for example, for small projects specifically.
There is a comments here, I think, in the chat box. When will the paper for digital passports? When will the paper for the digital passports? Is it question from? It's coming out, yeah. When it's coming out? Is this the question? Yeah.
Yeah,
So the paper is already, yeah.
Sorry, Abraham, I think the guidance we're seeing is that it'd be Q2 of 2024 that the regulation will come out, but there will be a period of time then allowed for people to get their data together and to start complying with it. So it won't immediately be affecting companies.
Yeah.
But
right.
as we all know, these things take a long time to get right, and you need to be starting now to be thinking about it. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. I think, there is everything I can see in the chat box. So I would like again to thank our presenters, Sean, Antonio, and Jonathan. And it was really useful to learn about your output and research. And hopefully we will meet again in the coming conference.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.